Yes.
Dear colleagues, on behalf of WAIPA and the World Bank Group, it is my pleasure to welcome you and thank you for joining us today. We have over 350 confirmed participants from investment promotion agencies or IPAs, governments, academia, development finance institutions, and others from every corner of the world. We're very excited to present today key findings of the WAIPA World Bank Group report on the state of investment promotion agencies with the evidence from our joint global survey of national IPAs. These findings help us understand IPAs better by answering questions such as, what are they doing? What services do they provide to investors? What sectors do they focus on? What strategies, organizational structures, staffing, key performance indicators, systems, and tools do they have? And what challenges do they face? We have today great speakers. Let me introduce them now. Christine Chiang is a practice manager for the Investment Climate Unit at the World Bank Group. She is responsible for a large lending and advisory projects portfolio, including business environment, investment policy and promotion, and government to business technology components globally. She also leads related research, knowledge management, and our donor and partnership relationships, among other. Christine joined the World Bank Group in 2004 as an economist and rapidly became lead economist, then a manager. She got her PhD in economics from the Johns Hopkins University. Bostian Scholar is WAIPA's executive director and former director of SPIRIT, the Slovenian public agency for promotion of investment, internationalization, entrepreneurship, and tourism. He was also a counsel for economic affairs of Slovenia and Istanbul, has 20 years of experience in management and business, working for several companies in diverse sectors and countries, and graduated in marketing and human resource management. I am Armando Heilbron, investment promotion workstream leader for the World Bank Group. I am part of the investment policy and promotion team within the investment climate unit that Christine leads. I advise World Bank teams and client IPAs across the world on this topic, while also leading generation and dissemination of related research and knowledge. Some time ago, I led the investment promotion at CINDE at a crucial time of attracting icon investors and reshaping the country's FDI strategy. I also spent several years working for multinational companies, domestic SMEs, and private sector associations. I hold a master's degree in international business from UC Berkeley. Andreas Gunther Hora is an expert in investment promotion and since 2016, a coordinator at WAIPA. Prior to this, he worked as a project manager and assistant to the Secretary General at an Austrian private nonprofit organization that popularizes and promotes investment opportunities in the region, from the Adriatic to the Black Sea. He graduated from the University of Vienna. Alex Sanchez is a private sector specialist, also part of the investment policy and promotion team of the World Bank Group. Prior to this, he worked at the Spanish ISEX under the Spanish Ministry of Economy as a trade and investment advisor. He has provided technical assistance and analytic services on FDI promotion, SME internationalization, business and investment climate to different countries from Latin America, Sub-Saharan Africa to Asia. Alex holds an MBA from the Spanish Institute of Foreign Trade. Last but not least, Ahmed Omish is a research analyst at WAIPA and data enthusiast. He holds a master's degree in economics, is skilled in qualitative and quantitative research, statistical programming using R and Stata, and data visualization. Both Ahmed and Alex work tirelessly on the research and the report that we will share with you today. Our agenda starts with welcoming remarks by Bastian and Christine. Then Alex and Ahmed will present the report's findings. Andreas will lead the Q&A session, and I will summarize and provide concluding remarks. Now, a few tips. There is polls that we'll be issuing at different parts of the presentation for you to answer, so please do participate. The more the participation, the better the survey or the polls. Start posing questions through the presentation using the Q&A button at the bottom of the screens. And those questions will be channeled to us and we'll be answering them in the Q&A section. We'll be sharing the presentation and the recording, so you don't need to take notes. If you like, of course, you're welcome. But we'll be sharing the presentation and the recording next day. Let me now turn it over to Bastian for his welcoming remarks. Bastian, over to you.
Thank you very much, Armando. Also, in my personal name, I must say first that I'm really excited that we can present this report. What I would like to stress out here is that this report is really a product of the long-term good relations and good work together with the World Bank Group, and we at WAIPA are really proud that this product came in this even special times. I would like to thank to the whole, let's say, World Bank team, especially Christine, Ivan, Armando, to you as well, and Alex, who is a co-author, and as well, of course, to all others who contributed. I would like also to thank to my colleagues, to Andreas and Ahmed. Ahmed is a co-author, as it was said previously. I really believe that our fruitful cooperation with the World Bank, which is the result of the first signed memorandum a couple of years ago, is just a start on the long journey. We are planning in the future that this kind of report would become like a tradition. We are all aware that this kind of reports on a global scale are missing, and the time series are missing. So there are no, let's say, constant numbers that would show us the trends. Luckily, we included as well into this report a COVID impact, so the readers would be able to understand that changing trend that was already going on prior to COVID, and it's now even more impacting the FDI community and activities. I would like to say to all the participants and welcome them to invite to, let's say, visit. We will provide the link afterwards to a special interactive platform which will give you I would say easier and interactive overview on this report, going, let's say, with a mouse into some graphs, and it shows immediately the data. So it's a really modern and interactive. So we did it for the let's say easier usage of let's say data overview. I would like to say at the end that I believe this report would help to all IPAs, to all FDI practitioners, also to, let's say, to academia. And we hope that in the future we will continue working on this kind of reports, maybe even with some other external partners, some other institutions, so to give the benefits to all the FDI community. And I'm really excited and looking forward to the presentations of our colleagues that really put enormously a lot of attention into this. And I welcome everyone, as Armando already said, to please give some questions, and we will try to answer the best possible. If not now, do interact with us or with the World Bank, and we will provide any additional information needed in the future. So this is from my side, and again, thank you to the World Bank for the fruitful cooperation, and I would hand over to the Christine. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bastian. Over to you, Christine.
Thank you, Armando. Thank you very much, Botian. At the beginning, I also like to thank you and WAIPA for the very meaningful partnership that we have been building over the past many years. And I echo your point that this partnership brings a lot of benefits to our investment promotion community around the world. And the World Bank Group feels very proud of this joint research and survey and report. Maybe, Botian, if you allow me, I would like to highlight why I think this is a unique and very meaningful project. First of all, it is global. As we all know that pre-existing similar surveys only have a regional or segment focus. And this time, between WAIPA and the World Bank Group, we actually invited all national IPAs in the world to participate in this survey. So that is 162. So it's a wide range of coverage. And secondly, it also has detailed questions. We included over 70 questions, exploring not only the characteristics, but also the challenges of the IPAs around the world. And the questions are structured around the World Bank Group's investment promotion and policy framework. The framework places investment promotion not only as a standalone very important topic, but also in the broader context of competitiveness, which is a feature of the investment facilitation negotiation currently under the way at the World Trade Organization. And our framework includes 3 key pillars for effective investment promotion, which will be explained in further details during today's webinar. But I just mentioned the 3 pillars very briefly. The first one is on corporate planning and sector prioritization. The second pillar is institutional framework. And the third pillar is on services that IPAs can provide to investors. And the survey also includes new areas of interest, including link to sustainable development goals, the key performance indicators or KPIs, we call them, that IPAs should have, and also what is the IPAs use and perceived effectiveness of social media and digitalization. And more importantly, we include questions what support IPAs would like to receive from the governments. As you know that the World Bank Group's main counterparts in the investment policy and promotion areas are IPAs, but also ministries of industry, ministry of economy, and ministries of finance. So we really serve as an advocacy for IPAs to receive support from the government. And also with this survey, as we know that it is so important to create robust data series building from our earlier efforts. For example, in 2005, we conducted an IPA survey that allows comparability with previous and future IPA survey. So between the different data points, we will be able to track IPA characteristics and sectors of interest over time and extract more robust conclusions about what works, what doesn't work in investment promotion area. And the challenges IPAs face, which were reported in this survey, have only been exacerbated with the COVID-19 induced crisis. But this is also a time when IPAs showed their importance and demonstrated their agility. IPAs could use empirical data like the data in this survey, rapidly review, revise, or confirm strategies, sectors of focus, approaches, and services to investors, and show agility, support investors, advocate to reform the investment climate as needed, and promote proactively, and therefore helping their locations recover faster than others. And as we know, FDI flows were already slowing before the COVID-19 outbreak, amid rising protectionism and other uncertainties that eroded investor confidence. The pandemic added a new and unprecedented risk to the mix, sending business confidence to historic lows. and resulting in an expected decline of 40% in global FDI inflows. But reviving investor confidence is not an easy task. More than ever, we need to work together as a community to provide the most relevant services to investors and get investment going. Finally, I would like to again thank WAIPA for the collaboration and also all the IPAs which participated last year in filling out this quite long survey that we issued, and also in responding to the quick COVID-19 related poll survey from our institutions. This is one single survey instrument every 1 to 2 years, and the time series of data, as I mentioned earlier, is simply so precious for us to advocate on your behalf the importance of IPAs and the importance of government support. I would really like to ask you all to keep and start participating in these global surveys. And finally, I hope that all of you find the webinar, the report, and its findings useful. Thank you. Back to you, Armando.
Thank you very much, Christine. Alex and Ahmed, the virtual floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, Armando, and thank you so much for the great words from Boshin and from Christine. I want to also, of course, say good morning and afternoon to everybody, and also thank you to all the participants that have connected to this webinar for this presentation of the report on the state of IPAs. We want to see here the overview of the presentation very quickly. We will provide information on the methodology, the details on the research process, the survey instrument. Also, we'll share a few details on the first and the second part of the 3 main pillars or areas that Christine was referring with regards to the effectiveness for investment promotion in developing countries. And Ahmed will present these 2 main areas. Right after that, I will move to the third area, the investor services and their offering. And we will follow with highlighting the main challenges affecting the IPAs in this current context and the desired reforms they may ask to the governments for being able to succeed in terms of attracting and retaining more investments. After sharing these reports, main highlights, and also the conclusions, we will also briefly discuss these main results from the parallel studies that both entities conducted with regards to the impact of COVID-19 and how the IPAs have been playing a key role to support foreign investors so far during the pandemic. So without further ado, we can start talking a little bit about the survey methodology and trying to reply some of the main questions regarding this. The first one would be how this survey questionnaire was designed, and it was mainly based on a combination from several World Bank Group and WAIPA surveys. We can see here the exhaustive list of the questionnaires that were taken into account for developing the survey questionnaire for this edition. As Christine was mentioning before, the 2005, which was a pivotal survey for our research, sending to the IPA census by that time. Also, we used the 2009 version, the 2017 IPA survey from World Bank as well, and also the editions from 2017 and 18 from the WAIPA annual surveys, which is mainly based for WAIPA members. Also, we used some inputs from the OECD report, Mapping of Investment Promotion Agencies in OECD Countries. And the idea was to basically capture each IPA key institutional aspect, its corporate strategic planning, sector prioritization, the existing service offering they had for investors, and of course, the final section to report on the main challenges and changes they are perceiving in the investment promotion field. We wanted to use all these inputs to be able to undertake this new time series analysis, also cross-variable analysis for the near future, as it is expected that the team will carry out these new pieces of research. And when was this survey conducted? Basically, it was conducted from July to December 2019. by using an online survey platform, very well known. And also we wanted to add here that this 2005 IPA census covers the widest range of IPAs in terms of the number, 106 in total, and provided this baseline for the annual comparison over time. WAIPA has been also conducting this annual service since 2016, and while the IPA service were a little bit focused on various IPAs organizational aspects and a little bit narrower in terms of number of economies, the World Bank Group surveys cover a wider number of economies, but then they're a little bit more focused on investment promotion measures. So it's in a way a kind of a perfect combination from all different inputs that made us able to create this fantastic questionnaire consisting on these 10 sections, 69 questions to be delivered. To whom the survey was sent? Well, the invitations and links to access and to participate in this survey were sent to C-level executives, mainly CEOs, CFOs, or even managing directors to some extent, that were working on IPAs from around the world. The information was collected on general characteristics, and in order to maximize the sample size, both entities joined efforts to build a new database, which included this contact information from national and subnational IPAs. This database was mainly based on the analysis of previous World Bank Group and WAIPA census of IPAs. And finally, 162 national IPAs were contacted. Due to the relatively small amount of national IPAs in the census of both entities, we decided to just leave it aside for an upcoming research piece that will be carried out in the near future. And the team finally got 91 responses from national IPAs for this survey, out of which 97% are national and 3% were some national IPAs. The team accomplished the target, which was set to reach at least an increase of 10% of the total number of responses from previous World Bank Group IPA survey in 2017. And the selected, you may be asking, the selected subnational IPAs were included because we understood that these regions have autonomous government, economic independence, therefore they may be applying the same mandates and conducting the same investment promotion activities as the national IPAs normally do. Now, talking a little bit more about the sample representation, here we can see the table displaying the geographical distribution of respondents of these IPAs. We can see that the bulk of participating agencies are from Europe and Central Asia. This actually follows the World Bank Group regional classification. And follow by this region, we see Sub-Saharan Africa in terms of the number of responses. When we look at the response rates, these were relatively similar to what was expected by the team across all regions. And of course, we can see that North America got the highest response rate since it consists only in a sample of 2 national IPAs. And it is followed by, again, Europe and Central Asia with 79%, pretty much over our expectations. So the main 3 reasons for this response rate that we can see here, well, we must take into account that not all the census information that was created was up to date. There was some issues with regards to contacting some of the IPAs. We had to undertake several efforts over a few months in order to get this contact and also to follow up with these agencies. Also, both the World Bank Group and WAIPA do not have a complete relation with all the IPAs, with all the existing IPAs. So some national IPAs were out of the sample. And also this applies for a bigger portion on the subnational IPAs. And also some other IPAs failed to provide a response in time to close the analysis. Now, when we see at the income distribution of the respondents, we see that although the results are relatively well distributed across all the income levels, the bulk of participating agencies were, as mentioned earlier, from high and upper middle income countries. This is related to a few of the regions that were highlighted before. And we see that the biggest response rate pertains to high income and upper middle income. Here's another way, more graphically, to see the participating agencies with countries colored per the latest UN income classification. And we can see, again, clearly greater participation from high and upper middle income countries. It is important also to note that because of the country, the question coverage of the previous surveys conducted, this was a much bigger survey in terms of number of responses. The number of responses per question may vary dramatically. Further comparison analysis also would need to take into account the restrictions in terms of the subset of IPAs observed in this specific time of period. And now I think it's also necessary to clarify the rationale behind the profile that the team took in order to include these agencies for the study. So we understand basically this definition of the IPA as the entities considered to be the best public institutions to meet government objectives for attracting, establishing, retaining, expanding, and linking private investments. This is aligned with previous definitions provided on several World Bank Group recent research studies and papers. For instance, the definition provided on Heilbron and Aranda's 2020 Comprehensive Investor Services Framework, and also Heilbron and White 2020 Establishing a High Performance Institutional Framework for FDI. We also understand, as part of the IPA's definition, the fact that these entities are usually tasked with operationalizing government FDI goals and providing services for foreign investors. These often are labeled as investment promotion, and this is to say basically that services designed to persuade investors to select one location over other competing locations and then successfully establish, operate, and expand the project of these foreign investors. Finally, due to some IPAs characteristics, the definition goes beyond investment promotion, and it covers a wide array of areas and mandate, and we will also see that in the following slides, including, among others, export promotion activities. This, of course, in many countries depicts the IPA as the main agency that coordinates these wider FDI implementation efforts, but not only related to FDI policy, and directs the country's economic marketing efforts for new foreign investment. We can see, for example, that Invest in Hong Kong, Invest India, or Invest in Turkey all lead their respective country and economies' FDI efforts. So that would be the perfect example. It is worth also mentioning that due to some IPAs characteristics, these observations may differ per the questions. Now, talking a bit of the structure of the report, as Christine was explaining before, we wanted to structure it around the novel World Bank Group framework for investment promotion. And this is related to the effectiveness of the agencies in attracting and retaining FDI. And it was including basically these three pillars that were already explained. Basically, just to not repeat ourselves, is basically based on corporate planning and sector prioritization. And these are ways to improve the strategic planning and focus of the IPAs, how to make them prioritize, which are the best bets for sectoral efforts on investment promotion. Also working on the institutional framework for FDI, which is basically focused on strengthening these kind of preconditions that are needed in order to have a strong agency, including governance, resourcing tools, and institutional coordination among other public entities and private sector. And basically, finally, the investor services, which is also focused on the comprehensive investor services framework. Just to give you some background on this research, it is common knowledge that IPAs cannot attract investment into every economic sector. That's hence the need for this sector prioritization. And the lack of this sectoral focus, trying to reach out to many companies in multiple sectors, maybe misunderstanding the domestic investment competitiveness that the location has, may harm the potential outcomes and the likability of succeed in these efforts. Therefore, the need for IPAs to have these roadmaps in order to guide them on achieving these objectives in alignment with the national development goals and plans, and also the need to set up these strategic pillars and activities through which those objectives can be met and can be related to this logical framework that the World Bank Group has been working on, which includes inputs, outputs, outcomes, and of course, impacts to the wider economy. This first pillar revolves the corporate planning around the fundamental concept of these IPA strategies and corporate plans. They need to set up specific and quantifiable impact objectives. And the second pillar basically seeks to improve all these preconditions, while the third pillar seeks to improve the service offering of the IPAs, trying to be based on what the investors really need. So now we can move to the first pillar of effective investment promotion, the corporate planning and sector prioritization, in which we will emphasize the importance of having these preconditions, and Ahmed will present this section. Over to you, Ahmed. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Alex. First of all, I would like to thank you all for joining this webinar. I hope so you will find it useful, and I hope you will enjoy this presentation as much as I enjoyed in working on this project together with my colleagues. Like previously, Christine and Alex mentioned, corporate planning and sector prioritization is very important for the successful investment promotion. Why strategy is important? Because IPAs should define the clear, defined objectives in this strategy, and they should define how these objectives will be reached. Basically, strategy should represent sort of IPA's road to success. When it comes to the statistics of do IPAs have a multi-year strategy, 70% of them indicated that they do have the strategic document. However, a significant proportion of them still lack this strategic document. 24% of IPAs indicated that they do not have a multi-year strategy. Survey also emphasize and includes a question on the influence of SDGs on IPA strategy. We can see that SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, are mainly shaping the identification of priority sectors and activities for investments. And also they are influencing the establishment of strategic partnership with policymakers at the national and as well as the international level. These are quite encouraging results, knowing the importance of the SDGs and the role of IPAs in supporting this agenda by attracting sustainable investments. Alex, we can continue with the next slide. Indeed, we mentioned previously that sector targeting is a key for the successful investment promotion. As a matter of fact, many IPAs are performing this activity. However, survey indicates that they do have many priority sectors, and this is not the main aim of this practice, as the focus and the main aim of this practice is to select the key and specific sectors that are based on a selection criteria. Usually they are based on the national development plans of the respective countries. They are based on the future prospect of these sectors, etc. However, IPAs still are doing oppositely, and they tend to have a very large number of priority sectors, which is diminishing the effectiveness of this activity. We can see that 40% of IPAs have more than 10 priority sectors, while 26% of IPAs have between 8 and 10 priority sectors. Before I continue with the statistics that's related to the top priority sectors of IPAs, I would like to invite you to participate in our first poll, where you should guess which sector is the top priority sector by IPAs, and later we will compare these results with the actual report results. I will launch this poll in a few seconds, so please participate. Okay, the poll is launched. We'll wait 1 minute or 2 minutes to receive all the answers. Okay, the responses are coming. We will end the poll in a few seconds. Okay, the poll is finished. I will now share the results. As we can see, as per your votes, the agriculture, fishing, and forestry received 24%. IT services received the highest number of responses, followed by renewable energy, food products and beverages, and construction. When we compare these results with our own survey results, Alex, you can switch the slide. This table here is presenting the top 15 priority sectors as stated by IPAs. A staggering number of 68% target renewable energy. This is another proof that IPAs are starting to realize their important role in supporting SDGs, especially as renewable energy is very important for the 7th goal of the SDGs and 11th, which are affordable and clean energy and sustainable cities and communities. If you analyze more the top 5 sectors of IPAs, we can see there is a mixture of traditionally sectors like agriculture and food production, and also high value added sectors, IT services, pharmaceutical, biotechnology, and medical devices. If you present this data in a different way across different income groups, we can see that IPAs from high income countries tend to focus more on high value added sectors. This is this graph that is highlighted with the green square. For example, here we don't have traditionally target sectors like agriculture and food production. IPAs from high income countries mainly target pharmaceutical, biotechnology, and medical devices, followed by renewable energy, IT services, transport and telecommunications, and RD intensive sectors in general. If you check these results over the rest income groups, mainly they are still targeting the traditional, the primary sector, which is agriculture, fishing, and forestry, which is the #1 priority sectors across low middle income, upper middle income, and low income category. Now, there is a question how they select these priority sectors. Majority of IPAs select these sectors based on a national development strategy or any other similar policy document, followed by research on global demand and FDI trends in general. What is encouraging is that only a handful of agencies are making this decision independently. As we can see, only 5% of IPAs selected sectors by themselves. Furthermore, all IPAs select the priority sectors after a detailed analysis, which is very important as in order for this practice to be effective, it shouldn't be conducted randomly. After we selected the target sectors, it is the time for the implementation of the promotion plans for these sectors. IPAs perform different activities for this purpose. As we can see from this graph, majority of them are heavily relying on participation in sector events and conferences. Generally, the top rated activities are related to the attraction stage, while activities that receive lower number of percentages, they are related to the retention and linkages stages. What is interesting that very few number of IPAs is actually purchasing investor database for the sector. Why I'm saying this, as I would say that the information is the key, a good quality information is the key for IPA success and for generating good leads. But very few agencies are using investor databases for this purpose. Now I will present key findings over the second pillar for effective investment promotion. And this is institutional framework. This pillar is emphasizing the importance of institutional framework under which an IPA operates. It's saying that IPA should have a business-like structure. It should possess institutional and financial autonomy. Literature, investment promotion literature also emphasize the importance of mandate clarity. It means they should have a few mandates that's mainly based around the investment promotion. And they should possess a certain degree of flexibility to adjust internal structure as well as resources. Let's continue with the first slide, which is about organizational structures of IPAs. This slide is showing to us that IPAs have different organizational structures, but mainly they are semi-autonomous agency reporting to the ministry, subunit of ministry, or autonomous public body. Literature on investment promotion also suggests that IPAs should have close connections with high level of governments. Usually this is either prime ministry office or president office or strong ministry. Survey shows us that more than 60% of IPAs report to the ministry. Usually this ministry is either Ministry of Industry or Ministry of Commerce. Let's proceed with the following slides. As I previously mentioned, it's very important that IPAs have a simple mandate and clear mandate about investment promotion. However, many agencies are combining different mandates that go beyond of mandate of investment promotion. We can see in this lower graph that 53% of IPAs have between 6 and 10 mandates. The most common mandates are foreign investment promotion, which is performed by almost 100% of IPAs, followed by promotion of domestic investment, policy advocacy, matchmaking services, one-stop shop, and export promotion. However, we can see that very large percentages of IPAs are combining investment promotion with the export promotion. However, this is not advisable for the IPAs coming from developing countries due to the budget restrictions. We can also see that the promotion of sustainable development goals receive quite a large number of responses, which is another proof that IPAs started to incorporate SDGs within their strategies. If you perform additional analysis of the number of mandates and correlation with the log GDP per capita, Alex, can you please just, okay. If we compare, if we perform analysis of mandates and log GDP per capita, which in GDP per capita in this case serves as a proxy variable for the development, we can conclude that the developed countries tend to have more specialized IPAs with clearer mandate of investment promotion. We can see as a GDP per capita increase, the slope is telling to us that generally those IPAs have less mandates. Budget is another very important element for IPA. Why? Because it has immense influence on the quantity as well as of the quality of the stuff. It affects the performed activities, the range of performed activities by IPAs. It affects the existence of a regional and overseas offices. So it's very important that IPAs have a sufficient budget in order to effectively conduct their functions. Survey results shows that mainly IPAs are financed through governments. Some portion of them is also supplementing the budget by international organizations and also by the fees received from the investors. On this pie chart here is showing that 34% of IPAs have a budget below 2 million. However, quite large proportion of IPAs have a very large budget. We can see here that 25% of IPAs have a budget of more than 10 million. However, when we present this data over different income groups, it's clearly that IPAs coming from more developed countries tend to have larger budgets. For example, IPAs coming from high income countries on average have a budget of 30 million. The previous graph showed the total size of IPA budget. However, we are also interested in a specific budget on the size of the budget on investment promotion. This pie chart on the left side is showing us distribution of IPA's promotional budget over different ranges. We can see that the bulk of IPAs have up to 1 million, 1 million specifically dedicated for the investment promotion. In addition to the size of this budget, it's also important the proper allocation of the budget. Generally, the largest proportion of this budget is allocated to the investment generation, while the lowest percentage is allocated to the policy advocacy. Only 5% of the investment promotion budget is allocated to this important activity. Why I'm saying this important activity, as policy advocacy affects investment climate of particular country, and we all know how investment climate is important factor in attracting and in attracting investments and in making investors to actually select that particular location. Now it's time for the second poll. Now we would like if you guess what is the average number of IPAs total full-time staff. I will launch the poll in a few seconds, so please join us. The poll is launched, so you have 1 minute to answer. Ten seconds left. Very interesting results, I would say. Okay, we are ending the poll and sharing the results with you. I hope all of you can see it. The majority of you selected 67, followed by 98. Let's now compare these results with our official results. We can see, I would say that you were quite far. As we can see that an average IPA has 161 full-time employees. Out of these employees, 129 are technical staff, while 38 out of this technical staff, 38 works only on the investment promotion, while 13 works only on the FDI. We can see also the number of women per each of these categories. I would say it's quite relatively well representation of women as it is almost close to the 50%. We can continue, Alex, with the following slide. As I said, it's important to mention that size and quality of IPA staff is important. Previously, we presented you let's say the quantity future of the IPA staff. Now we will present you the quality future of the IPA staff. Why quality of staff is important? Because IPAs are service organization. So it is necessary that IPAs employees possess certain types of skills. Usually IPA employees should have bilingual and bicultural skill. They should also have some degree of private sector experience. We can see that 82% of IPA staff have a specific background in one or more of the priority sectors. 58% are proficient in a foreign language. 50%, half of them have a public sector experience, while the lowest percentage have a private sector experience. One important element, if you can switch. Okay, one important element of attracting quality workforce is wages. These wages, they should be competitive. However, majority of IPAs offer wages that are at the level of the public sector, while let's say relatively high percentage provide above public but below private sector, and wages that are comparable with the private sector. Very small percentage provides wages that are above the private sector. Some countries, of course, depending on some factors, usually this is the size of the country, establish the subnational IPAs. However, when they do this step, it's very important that they establish a very close connection with these subnational IPAs. Indeed, the survey indicates that majority of them, they maintain close and systematic relationship with them. Very few agencies do not have any contact with their subnational IPAs. Let's proceed with the next slide. Another important element of this pillar is the coordination mechanism. We can see that the best coordination mechanism between agencies and other entities are regular interagency meetings and the specific interagency working groups. The most used coordination mechanism is a memorandum of understanding. However, it received the lowest rating from IPAs. That's all regarding the first two pillars of investment promotion. Now, Alex will provide you more information regarding the investor services and main findings within this pillar.
Thanks, Ahmed.
Alex, 15 more minutes, please. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Armando. So now moving to the third pillar and last one for this effective investment promotion on investor services. Basically, to put you on a little bit more about the background and understand how the World Bank Group proposes this pillar, basic innovative investor services are considered in order to develop the economy and to provide the investors with the much needed support when they're actually starting operations or when we're trying to link them to the host economy. So basically, the World Bank Group has proposed this framework called the Comprehensive Investor Services Framework for IPAs in order to assess, design, package, and offer critical services for the investors according to the IPA's capacity, the IPA's financial resources, and of course, the sectoral and economic priorities, as we were mentioning before. At the same time, it allows to measure and evaluate the success of the IPAs based on the activities on the different stages of the investment life cycle. And it also allows them to tackle a greater number of investors' needs and issues, ranging from the exploration, startup, and also the expansion and linkages with domestic suppliers. Therefore, IPAs are able to increase the probability in which the location will succeed on harnessing the investment. Basically, the CISF, as we call it, was taken into account in order to ask the IPAs what are the services they are providing currently, and based on the information provided by the IPAs as they were reporting, this is the overall table that shows the main results from these service offerings according to the specific type of service, the specific stage of the investment life cycle in which these services are being provided. And these are the overall numbers that actually show that still the IPAs are quite focused on the attraction stage, then on the entry and establishment phase by providing marketing and information services. But then when we look at retention and expansion, also linkages and spillover stages of the investment life cycle, we see that less IPAs are quite active in terms of providing services to investors. The darker green indicates more IPAs providing the service, and as we just mentioned, there's a decay in these two stages, which are more important than ever for providing this support to the investors at risk or the investors that may be experiencing grievances and so on and so forth. So in summary, what this table tells us is that IPAs are still too front-loaded at the attraction stage, And there's a need to actually shift these resources and emphasize the services on the retention and linkages stages. When we say marketing information, we say a lot of location branding, we say a lot of events, outreach, missions and activities, and also provide information at the E&E, which are top kind of services provided, and we'll see that in a minute. And basically what this CISF wants to represent is the main categories for IPAs to rethink, you know, this value offering and this value proposition for investors within the process of having and expressing interest on the location, establishing, and also once it has entered in the location to expand on new projects, diversify, and also connect with the local domestic suppliers. We can see more in detail here the top 3 services provided to investors from what IPAs have been reporting in the survey. And this is basically the detail in which the summarized table that we're seeing before actually captures all the services. And basically we can see that at Attraction, almost all IPAs surveyed participate in business events, conferences abroad or within the country, promoting priority sectors or the economy as a whole. Also, wide majority of them participate in investment-related shows, also providing briefings on the locations, or even going with the multinational company representatives during the first-time site visits. Also, in the entry establishment stage, they tend to guide on government structures, processes, regulations for business startup. They also provide wide support to this first-time site visit with agenda preparation, suggestions, planning, and meeting confirmations, bridging a little bit the investor and the stakeholders. Also, they provide the location investment guide. Normally, it was printed before, normally is now downloadable from the website, 70% of them. And when we see at the top 3 services provided in these 2 last stages of the investment life cycle, retention, expansion, and linkages and spillovers, we tend to see a decrease in the amount of IPAs that are providing services. And from those, the most reflected by IPAs was where they reach out to investors to gather information on grievances, providing tailored response to specific queries from specific investors, and also facilitation and coordination services for participating in common initiatives and events for networking opportunities or similar. Lastly, on linkages and spillovers phase, we see again initiatives, participation initiatives and events that provide networking opportunities with local firms, and also relevant activities and tailored response to specific queries for this stage. But again, in a wider, in a lower amount of IPAs, which are providing these services. Now we want to hear from you on this poll number 3, another very important topic, which is the social media and how these platforms are being used by the IPAs and can help IPAs in order to promote and in order to make publicity about the location, about the specific priority sectors or segments, and also to spread the word about specific investment projects. So I think, Ahmed, you can trigger the poll whenever you're ready.
Sure, the poll is launched.
So basically, it asks which social media is the most effective for IPAs core activities. I think we can wait for 30 more seconds.
Sure. I ended the poll and now I will share the results.
Okay, so we see that 81 attendees replied LinkedIn and selected LinkedIn as the social media, the one most effective for investment promotion activities. Let's see what the IPAs said on our survey. So aligned with the perception of the attendees, LinkedIn was chosen as the one most effective for carrying out these activities. We see that from the different aspects and activities that we selected for the question, such as identifying recruiting staff, identifying investors, gathering investors' intelligence, following investment promotion consultants. For all but just one of the categories that we included in the question, LinkedIn was selected by the IPAs as the most effective one. And the only one that didn't resonate was informing about the general public the values, the IPAs activities, which was Facebook. And just to finish with this area, we want to highlight other aspects of the investor services that were analyzed. And of course, it is no secret that digitalization and other technological changes are having a profound impact on the way businesses and service organizations are performing their operations. So more IPAs using digitalization, more emerging technologies, including the social media to reach target investors have been used. But still, we found some catch-up potential with regards to these specific areas. For example, 40% of IPAs reported not performing any kind of investor evaluation prior to providing the services to them. Say, for example, the impact that may have in the local economy, the potential for create linkages with domestic suppliers, the number of jobs they may create, and so on. Also, 90% of the IPA survey did not use a single system to facilitate their operations. An IPA needs at least some internal systems to provide good services to investors and to manage relationship with them, such as the standard operating procedures, such as the investor information systems or CRMs, custom relationship managers. Also, they need to have well-trained IPA account managers, and all these systems allow them to provide these services professionally and manage the relationship with investor properly. For example, we also found that 35% of the IPA survey did not have, by the time the survey was conducted, a CRM software, and only 26% of these CRMs were available via mobile devices, which is kind of quite necessary nowadays, taking into account the current restrictions for traveling, for accessing our regular and offices and our equipments. Also, 34% of responding IPAs have systems in place for the collection of complaints from investors and from grievances. This is a small number taking into account the potential investors that may be at risk currently with the current situation. And also 52% of IPAs do not quantify any benefits of cost to their work and efforts for the economy. So therefore, as we were mentioning on the institutional framework side, it is important to understand that IPAs really need to carry out this cost-benefit analysis in order to know what works, what doesn't work, and where to put the majority of the resources in order to have great benefits. Now, finally, the section on IPAS challenges, perceived changes, and reform. We wanted to also include a few questions in order to understand what were these trends. And this is the final poll that we included in the presentation. We want to know also which reforms to improve the attraction and retention of investments in your countries would be most desired. and also compare it with the results from the IPAs in the survey. So we encourage you all to participate and select one of the options that should pop up. It's just a minute or two.
Twenty seconds left. Okay, I'm ending the pool.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we have to finish in a few minutes so we can have sufficient time for discussion. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Armando. So we can see that participants selected better institutional coordination as the most desired reform for IPA's work. And also the second one would be smarter incentives, which is also quite important, taking into account the different aspects from these incentives and how some of them are not actually tracked and measured in terms of the potential benefits. So very quickly, we're gonna see a little bit of the biggest challenges faced by IPAs. The biggest one was budget, followed by human capacity, and also process and bureaucracy completes the top three. This confirms the challenges identified in 2017, since IPAs normally in developing countries suffer financial and human resources, but also red tape. As per the reforms and comparing to the replies from the attendants, better institutional coordination was also selected by IPAs, followed by strategic alignment and streamlined regulations. To conclude with the report, investment promotion, of course, can make a difference since there is a strong positive correlation between quality of promotion activities and FDI inflows, especially when the IPA, as we were summarizing, targets competitive segments, generates interest and proactively informs about the specific projects, provides investor services with quality, and has a strengthened location image. When he also advocates for policy reforms and a better investment ecosystem, it is more likely that these countries are gonna attract more investment. So are the key instruments for the governments to promote this economic growth, but we have found that many of them are still struggling, and this is an old story. To have solid strategic alignment and appropriate institutional setup, they're still also too focused on the traction stage and a little bit on the entry establishment phase, instead of focusing also on shifting resources to retention linkages stages. And in order to overcome this current global scenario, especially with the COVID-19, IPAs should still strengthen efforts on these two and on the advocacy to provide support on conducive policies for investment. Lastly, and I will just share the main insights from the parallel study that was added when we were finalizing the report. We wanted to also include the main results from a parallel studies that were conducted by both entities, WAIPA and World Bank Group, since COVID-19 pandemic ramped up and impacted all aspects and facets also of the economy, but more importantly of IPAs. So in this context, we included an addendum and was incorporated to address these issues. And the team conducted a survey, as well as WAIPA conducted their own survey, which are included here in the two links on this slide. And the main results, basically, just to summarize, were that investors, by the time the survey was conducted from March to April 2020, we found that investors experienced negative impacts on production, revenues, employment, supply chain flows, and investment volumes. And the majority of IPA survey were expecting these to worsen over the following 3 or even 6 months. There were severe disruptions on services and manufacturing, with hotels and restaurants and other travel and tourism services as the most hard-hit sectors. Also, automotive and textiles felt this hit, and other sectors, inter alia IT, computer, software, media and pharmaceutical and medical devices, proven to be more resilient. And with regards to the IPA situations, 83% stated that they were working actively and remotely, 66% maintaining close communication with investors, and 60% of them assisting on investor queries. With their service provision, at least good news, they were providing a wider range of their normal overall service offering, and the coverage of information related to COVID-19 and related impacts was pretty much wide as well, systematically gathering information on issues, specific issues, and trying to solve those. So just to finish, after the pandemic, what we have found on these parallel studies is that IPAs should be prioritizing retention services. They should rethink their value proposition in order to come up with strategies toward resilient segments. And they also need to promote new outreach programs and advocate for critical reforms to address these bottlenecks for specifically investors at risk. So with this, we thank you very much for this long journey on how our report was produced and the main insights. And I think we can go now with Armando and Andreas for the Q&A section and some comments from the attendees. Thank you so much.
Thank you very, very much, Alex and Ahmed, for such a rich presentation. And these are just a few of many good findings the report offers. I can assure you that I encourage everybody to read it. In the meantime, let me just retain these few key points for everybody's benefit. At the strategic level, most important, IPAs do have strategies, and more they're influenced by SDGs, national development plans, and research. But skills still have too many sectors of focus, and so this is an issue to consider. Some of you already started to discuss that in the Q&A. Sectors include agribusiness, renewable energy for most, and their neighbors. So that's another thing to think about, because too many IPAs contacting the same investors. And do you really have a compelling value proposition for that? All IPAs rely mostly on in-person events, conference, seminars, trade shows, outreach. You know this. These are not only the most expensive IPA activities, but also are severely curtailed in the current no travel context. So that's something to consider. Secondly, at the institutional level, more IPAs are autonomous or semi-autonomous, as we heard, which tends to be better for the needed agility for IPAs to respond to private sector. You know, it's not government speed, it's business speed, and you know that. However, IPAs still struggle and more with too many mandates, including what should be their core for an IPA to promote FDI or investment. Mandate crunch exacerbates the lower the income level of the IPA's country, which is also countersensical. Perhaps developing countries need a lot more FDI, but then with so many mandates, they have too many things to handle. Most of them struggle with financial and human resources, especially the ones in the lower income levels. While these institutions have better staffing levels than before, if you look under it, you peel the onion, as you skillfully showed in the presentation, you see that only a few are dedicated to investment promotion. Then of highlight, congratulations to you all for this, is that IPAs claim having more women participation nowadays than in the past. In the very old days, this was a boys' business. No longer. 50% there is for investment promotion staff. So great. I'm very happy about that. IPA staff have better backgrounds, especially regarding sector expertise. Either they study it or they acquire it by working in the sector directly or indirectly, but still lacking relevant language skills and private sector experience. That still remains low, and especially in the developing world. Institutional coordination is a challenge. Hopefully, regular interagency meetings and specific working groups have promise in improving institutional coordination. Many IPAs ask for support from their governments, better coordination and funding. But then this is still a big challenge nowadays with the COVID pandemic and the impact on governments or public funds. And last but not least, regarding services to investors, this could be more balanced across the investment life cycle, especially in the context of COVID. For instance, providing information and hands-on support to existing investors and advocating reforms to improve the investment climate. More than ever, this is needed. Still, IPAs have low adoption of key systems and tools that would allow them to perform their job more professionally. Okay, this is the summary, some things I may have missed, but I think those are items that resonate with me, hopefully with you as well. With that, let me hand it over to Andreas for leading the Q&A session. Over to you, Andreas.
Thank you very much, Armando. First of all, I think one of the questions that was posed quite often was on the presentation and the video of the presentation now, whether this will be shared. Yes, this will be shared subsequent to the ending of the session. So I think this should be ready by tomorrow, that you can revisit this presentation, and you can check the presentation accordingly. I think also in reference to the summary you just mentioned, Armando, I think a question that we had quite often was on the relevance of IPAs, also given the current perhaps downward trend of FDI and the current pandemic, particularly because, as Christine mentioned at the beginning, it wasn't that Corona made everything, it started just with Corona, but we saw a downward shift and downward trend of FDI over the last years already. So why do you think, Armando, do you think IPAs are essential now, and why do you think they will remain essential in the near future as well?
Thank you very much, Andreas. IPAs should be a connector between the private sector and the stakeholders in a country, including, of course, the government, but other stakeholders as well. In such a role of connecting, being an active connector allows the IPA to be in a very important position, especially in the light of this crisis. Right now, investors need help. They need some support from agencies, from the governments, and IPAs should be there, front and center, dealing with the crisis, helping these companies survive, retain as much of their investment, retain as much of their operation, but also of their jobs, the jobs that are very badly needed in this time. At the same time, they should be front and center in learning what needs to be done to get investment going, as Christine was pointing out in the beginning. So I think they have this very important role. However, the first reaction from a government, just put yourselves in the shoes of government. I see my agency, of course, they're doing events, going to places, traveling, this and that, no longer possible, no longer needed. So shut down the agency. That's what they do. They do marketing, no longer needed. Shut the agency. I need the money. Get this money, funnel it to something else. If the agencies were not able to position or come to the plate and position themselves right now as this key connector, they may not survive the crisis. So over to you.
In this regard as well, it is essential for investors to be able to reach out to IPAs, and I think investors are asking for information, and then they want to receive this information accordingly. But I think one interesting question we had there as well was, and I think this would be for you, Armando, but also for Alex and Ahmed, on on why we had sometimes perhaps issues with obtaining results, and why this might be an issue for when we look at it from an investor's point of view, that when we who ask them for results can't receive information, this would perhaps also mean that perhaps an investor might not be able to receive information that they would need. So why is this an issue?
Yeah, let me leave Ahmed and Alex to answer, and then I could pitch in. Over to you.
Well, I think there is no right answer on this question. I think reasons are sometimes different from agency to agency. However, I would really encourage all IPAs and all officials from IPAs to really devote their valuable time and to fill our future surveys. As we previously mentioned, it's very important that we have a time series data in order for us to conduct more advanced analysis, and only IPAs can have benefit actually from this data, and we are doing this because of them. So I think there is no right answer on this question. I would just encourage all IPAs to realize the importance of filling the survey, and I hope in the future we will obtain even more responses than now.
Yeah, and perhaps just to complement what Ahmed said, I think it is no surprise that the most effective IPAs are data-driven, and they also conduct very thorough analysis of what their strategies, how they're performing in terms of the specific areas, the specific segments and sectors they want to tackle, and what the specific activities they undertake, how they actually turn to be important or effective. So this kind of mindset, if you like, or approach in which the data has a pivotal role in order to guide the IPAs operations is much needed, especially for IPAs in developing countries. So that's why activities and efforts such as these joint surveys, and also serve as a platform for knowledge and interactive exchange of best practices in order to know what works and what doesn't work in investment promotion. Over to you, Armando.
Yeah, thank you very, very much. Well, let me say that attracting investment is not an easy task. Of course, you could do all your best and still come to crisis. And this has happened to all of us, I'm sure. And we can count countless stories here, but this is a difficult task. What happens is that perhaps IPAs have not gotten the credit they deserve because most likely they have not been doing the right thing. Let me just say this. How come, as Sean Dugan was saying here, how come we couldn't contact all the IPAs in the world? How come some IPAs are not visible and they're not responding? They may have a website, but nobody answers. This is still happening. We have alerted about the situation about 10 years ago, that investors were knocking at the doors of IPAs, but nobody answered. You may remember that report that we issued some years ago. So not visible, not responding, not providing basic information services, and that's part of the problem. Then spending some public resources, but without doing any M&E, no evaluation, as you can see, or very little or few do evaluation. So they're not showing the value for the money. They're not showing return on investment of public funds. And as such, they may be seen as a luxury. And in this context, more than ever. So if you guys, IPAs, listening to me, want to position yourselves, you need to show your worth. You need to show your value, as Christine was mentioning in the beginning. Last but not least, some of the comments as well, questions here is, why aren't some agencies buying research or data that is needed to make a lot more aiming at particular segments or niches, not just agriculture or renewable energy at broad? So that is something that is needed. I'm not saying that IPAs are not doing it. Some are doing it very well, but others are perhaps scratching the surface there. They are not using the data, as Alex was mentioning. And that may be an issue of budget. Another of you asked a question, why aren't they buying this data? Well, it may be lack of knowledge about the importance of this, lack of knowledge about the availability of these data sources. Some are free, some are paid. And then if it is paid, lack of resources to buy the data, or perhaps even allocating the budget to priorities. Instead of going to an event and just have a talk there, perhaps it would be best to buy the right data and be more punctual. All right, back to you guys.
Yes, certainly. I think also what we've seen in the last couple of weeks, last months, that IPAs were willing to engage. They were willing to whether it was online webinars or even a short survey we have undertaken. So there was a willingness from the IPA side. So it wasn't like that they shut down the agency just because perhaps some of their aspects didn't work. So I think what we've seen, because this was also a question from the audience, how was our impression at the moment to reach out to the IPAs in this current pandemic? And we've actually undertaken a series of interviews we had with the heads of the IPAs to understand their point of view, to understand what they are doing in their respective countries, to perhaps what solutions they might see and where they might see the future of investment promotion as well, because this is for us crucial to learn also from their point of view. So perhaps also, Armando, how did you find your contact with investment promotion professionals in the last months? And perhaps what innovative trends did you see from their side in the last months and weeks?
Of course, you get all sorts of reactions and requests. Being at the World Bank Group, from the countries that are in a certain situation, basically struggling for attracting or even retaining investment, to all the way to countries that or locations that need to reposition themselves in the context of several transformational drivers, and in addition, the different scenarios that COVID pandemic has brought to all of us. So I would say that the most important aspect they have been talking to us about is retention of existing investors. So in that context, I would say this is something, if you have not done it, and I hope you have, focus on retaining as many investors as possible, avoiding them to shut down, either domestic or foreign. It doesn't matter really. It's a matter of keeping those operations, those investments alive, and be able to restart them as soon as they are able and safe to do so. That would also help with employment as soon as possible for the recovery. The second thing that we have been talking to them is, all right, so how do I attract investment in this scenario? What should I do? And in that context, what we say is three things. Review your current sector strategies, services offering, etc., and then revise or confirm what you have. Most likely you need to fine-tune some things, others start from scratch, get new segments in there, and that would allow you to reposition yourself. But you need to do this as you run. You cannot wait the typical 6 months or whatever for a strategic process. It needs to be done very, very quickly and react accordingly. Adapt your strategy, adapt your sector focus, even segment or niche, and see what's going on based on data, based on what's moving. And there's things that are moving, right? Not as we wish, but there's things that are having dynamism. The second thing then is to reform. And it's an internal reform. Most likely you need to reallocate internally. You need to improve coordination. You need to advocate and do other things so that reforms can happen. Some of you mentioned smarter incentives. Absolutely. This is the time to also review this and think about the incentive framework there. And last but not least, promote proactively. So more than ever, you need to do that. If you were before waiting for investors to come, this is not the time. You need to really be proactive more than ever, as I mentioned. Let me take advantage. There was a question, I think, for Christine. if Christina, you are able to answer this question. The question is, what is the best agency of the government to manage and administer incentives? Is it the presidency, the ministry, the IPA, or somebody else like a consultancy? So Christine, if you allow us to hear from you about this question.
Can you hear me, Armando? Okay, good. Yeah, so I think what we usually recommend is that before, as we know that, in the investment law, right, there are different clauses about different dimensions of investment policy. And also in the tax laws, because incentives usually it's in the format of tax, different tax incentives. So our recommendation basically to the government on incentives is to remove the incentives from the investment law. I mean, in the investment law, you could mention certain clauses in a general terms, but really put in the context of the fiscal management, because the incentives are usually issued by the Ministry of Finance, and it's a tax foregone, because you give the incentives to foreign investors or other investors of different sizes or of different objectives. So our view is that this has to be looked at from a Ministry of Finance perspective, because they need to know the cost of the incentives as well as the objectives of the incentives. So in our team, Armando knows that we have a incentives work stream as part of the investment policy and promotion framework. And we developed a very detailed cost and benefit analysis of incentives. That's basically to look at the costs and meeting the objectives so that you can see the effectiveness of those incentives. So I think I overheard Armando saying, right, because maybe there were questions whether this is the time to use smart incentives to attract investors. And on this one, I think our general view is that, because I think there was also an earlier question, right, is to say, we tried everything. We are very proactive. We go out, we help, the sector mapping, we do the promotion, we give the incentives, but somehow not always we see the results, right? So, if you look at our literature review and also the global flagship reports, what we observe is that you do need, I think Armando, you mentioned this several times in the answers, is that investment climate is very important. It's an enabling environment. So if the investment climate is not there, then even if you use a lot of incentives, you will not attract the type of investors that you want. They may come for tax incentives, for tax cuts, but they may not be the ones that help you upgrade on your GVCs that will help you improve productivity. So having the necessary investment climate enabling environment is actually the first thing that the government needs to do. And then when the country actually gets on the short list of investors, right? When they look at different locations, they need to decide, where we go. And when your country actually gets on the short list, then smart incentives could help you to eventually attract some of those investors. But if you're not even on the short list, no matter what incentives you give, it's not going to help you. Back to you, Armando.
Thank you very much. Back to Andreas.
We have also an interesting question on the global value chains, but because what are the effects of the FDI plunge on reshaping the global value chains in terms of the pandemic, and also whether IPAs should have an SME development component to facilitate SME value chains to MNEs. So how in this sense was the value chain affected by the pandemic, and also what might be the what might be chances for IPAs also to affect that, but also what might be new chances for different value chains?
I think the question could be also to Bastian, even Christine, who works a lot in this topic, not to monopolize. Bastian, would you like to comment on it?
Yeah, hello. Actually, these are, I would say, a hot topic now, especially the global value chains are becoming more regional. I guess this goes hand in hand with that, what pandemic caused now, and everyone is trying to secure the value chain, of course. And we heard even that some of the countries were even willing to finance to some companies to bring back their production from some particular markets. I don't know if this is good. We are hearing all the time nearshoring, reshoring, but definitely there will be a change. And this also goes, I guess, with sector prioritization. Maybe some countries will be in a need to bring in a forefront some new sectors that maybe have a shorter value chain, and then there will be more, let's say, effective with attracting investments that would need these shorter value chains. So I guess there is no one answer fit all. It depends on the countries and their preparedness and their KPIs and their, let's say, what they offer to the investors. But I guess without any doubt, the pandemic terribly influenced the global value chains and also connection to FDI.
Thank you very much, Bastian. Christine, would you have anything to comment, or even Ivan?
Sure, Armando. I'd like to just add to what Bastian already said. I think GVCs, it's not a new phenomenon. GVCs have been evolving over the last at least 30, 40 years. And I think the pandemic obviously is not the first crisis, although it is having unprecedented shocks, as we know, both from the supply side and the demand side. And ultimately, the value chains will belong to the companies that are efficient and that are robust. So multinational companies, they constantly find a balance, right, between efficiency and resilience. And what we are seeing from this pandemic is that there will be a trend where multinational companies will probably move somewhat on this balance from efficiency to more resilience. Resilience means that they may diversify their suppliers, they may build up a little bit the inventory, all just to manage basically the shocks and the uncertainties on the value chains. So there will be some adjustment on the production line, and as Bastian mentioned, we're looking very closely at the impact on the build-up of regional value chains, and also we are measuring the diversification of suppliers. We believe that this will happen. But one question that many are asking is whether reshoring, nearshoring will take place. And Bastian also mentioned that, for example, the United States and Japan and South Korea, actually governments provided a lot of tax incentives. I mean, talking about incentives for their own companies to reshore, meaning that, pull back their production to their own countries with the objective to create local jobs. But so far, I think that effect has not produced a lot of reshoring yet. I think some companies are using the incentives to pilot the diversification, and what we see more is instead of moving the production back home, actually they are moving certain production, for example, from China to the nearby countries, right? Where, you know, the labor cost is still low, and where the efficiency of the local companies, you know, because the question also asked about SME, right? Because ultimately companies in a local context can only connect to global value chain if they're efficient enough to provide the quality and quantity that multinational companies are looking for. So not every country will automatically, because production is moving away from China, not necessarily all countries can take the opportunity or take advantage of such diversion, investment diversion, if I can call that. But I think this is slowly happening, the investment diversion from China in particular. But what worries us a bit more is, you know, the balance between efficiency and resilience is going to happen, you know, with or without the pandemic. Sometimes it's due to technology, sometimes it's due to health reasons. So for various reasons, it will continue to adjust. What worries us right now is this trend of protectionism that started, as I said, started already before the pandemic. So we worry that this kind of tendency of reshoring, providing, you know, subsidies, and also, you know, closing certain market access to FDI, is we see that, you know, a lot of the entry screening is on the rise in the name of national security concerns. So I think, you know, if the policy goes down that trend, then it will have a very negative impact on global value chains worldwide. But the normal adjustment is just, you know, it's just a balancing act of multinational companies. We'll continue to watch, but I think it's not going to fundamentally change the GVCs.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you very much, Christine. We have a chance for 2 more questions. Andreas, over to you.
Thank you. As Boston mentioned in his answer, also KPIs. We also have one answer on what are the main KPIs for IPAs to measure the results and effectiveness. I think there, Boston, if you perhaps could reflect on this a bit, why this is important to measure the impact. On the one hand, to prove sort of the work, but also why it might help the IPAs on their daily work.
Yeah, what we are seeing is that the KPIs differ from the different, let's say, regions. Majority is still checking the number of projects or the value of the, let's say, the project. But recently we also had some discussions with some, I would say, let's say, more, let's say, highly advanced IPAs, and they are trying to change these KPIs towards more quality assessment. They are trying to position themselves with a different KPI. So because we all know now that the quality will come in the forefront, and let's say high-end sectors would become more important. So the quality of FDI is also important, and also in the line of with the SDGs. And of course, having a, let's say, good value proposition and then also good KPIs is extremely important for IPAs to be able to measure their, let's say, services. Some of them are doing as well the surveys with investors, how satisfied they are, of course, with their services. And then, of course, this gives them a feedback for a new strategy and how they would, let's say, position themselves in the future. And this goes together with what we are saying, that there is a need of revisiting the strategies, need to, let's say, make a more lean organization, focus more on the retention, as you said, Armando. So I guess these KPIs are extremely important things for IPAs to be in line with the new trends.
And no doubt this would show value.
Sure.
Andreas, one last
question. I think you mentioned it before already in a way, but Armando, but I think it's an important point for IPAs currently. It's on the question of the spend allocation for aftercare by IPAs, but maybe it's also important to underline, maybe Boston or Armando, why currently aftercare is so important, and why IPAs should not underestimate the importance of aftercare, and as such also why why perhaps a higher focus in terms of budget allocation would be beneficial for this subject.
Yes, thank you very much. I think more than ever, providing relevant services to investors is what IPAs should be doing. And investors are asking for support even when they're already established in the country. So that is where we see perhaps a rebalancing happening. If you remember that table that Alex showed, there is a strong focus at attraction, and investors already in the country are not at that stage anymore. They're actually more interested in helping or getting help on how to get their operation going back. And one of the key things that investment promotion agencies have been doing since the pandemic is providing updates on the regulatory environment, what can be done, how, what kind of support do they get, this and that. So these are things that we have seen with good eyes, agencies stepping to the plate and having these daily updates on what can be done. But not only that, if the investor has a particular question, having IPAs respond to that question. And again, these are investors already in the country. It's not responding a question to an investor about the possibility of investing. No, this is a real thing that needs to be dealt with by the agency, either with information or the right connection to the right authority, the right stakeholder who's going to take care of the issue, and then following through until the issue is solved out. This is on a company by company basis. Then there is the bigger benefit for everybody, advocating for reforms. When you see an issue happening over and over and over again, I mean, it's only natural that agencies would actually advocate, write a paper with good data, because you own this data. Most likely you can easily put together this one pager and then submit to the right authorities for them to reform the environment, make it better. And this could be regulatory, administrative, legal, regulatory, administrative, or even other things of the ecosystem that the investment needs to survive. All of these things are happening daily, and investors are actually struggling to survive. This is where the agencies come in. And actually, this is also part of my summary, I think, more than ever. I don't know if you have any final comments, Andreas, and then we could wrap up just to be on time. We got 6 more minutes.
No, just in case Bastian would like to comment on it, then.
Yeah, I would like to add, thank you very much, Andreas and Armando. I see the two aspects here, actually. It was even before we know that the existing investors are bringing, I don't know, 50%, let's say like expansion or the new investment. But now pandemic happened, and we saw we created, let's say, a platform on our webpage, and we saw how important was the immediate reaction and 24 hours, let's say, hotline or whatever of the teams of the IPAs to help to investors to understand the measurements of the, let's say, governments. We know that there was a discussion even like shutting down the agencies. One of our surveys showed that there will be like almost 8% were scared that they would be shut down. So we believe that it's exactly opposite. IPAs are more than ever needed to respond to these challenges that are around us. And of course, mitigating the risk of the investors that are going through now and keeping their, let's say, operations in their respective countries stable and I would say fit and proper. And then, of course, already showing them the options, what their governments are offering to them for a future potential expansion. And also this will be a good practice that the other investors that are potentially still thinking, because investors, they have money, they are just a bit cautious because of uncertainty, will be seeing later the opportunity, and when the time comes to resume the operations, they will again go back to that countries. Thank you.
Yeah, and perhaps just to complement Armando's and Bastian's point on retention, it is important to know that if we look at the data, most of an estimated amount between 60% to 75% of capital invested in the countries from foreign investors is actually coming from reinvestments and expansion of projects that are already in the country. So it is quite important for the IPAs to also take into account this and also shift the efforts towards retaining these investors and actually providing them with the opportunities to have more projects and new projects. And this is something that, based on our operational experience, we've seen that especially IPAs in developing countries with limited budgets and autonomy, they've been actually focusing much more on trying to attract new investments rather than focusing on how to handle the actual projects that they already have in the country. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Alex. Let me just take over to start closing, because I don't want to keep you too long here. We had a packed session today with lots of new information to digest. And I'm sorry, I apologize, because I had a long list of questions still to answer. So I'll take it one-on-one with you afterwards, and we'll have the team as well pitch in. We first heard from Bostian and Christine about the context of FDI, the collaboration between WAIPA and the World Bank Group, and how this research and report is unique. We also heard them thanking, and I personally do as well, thank you for having participated in the survey. And we encourage you to keep participating or start participating in the new global surveys, because this will help all of us improve the data and the findings and do some of these analyses that some of you were suggesting, so that we can correlate with other variables and have robust analysis, so that we can also keep a track of the trends. So where are we going? For instance, I know from my previous data that investment promotion agencies have become more autonomous over the time. So these are things that we all need to know. Are we going in the right direction or the wrong direction? And this would benefit the entire investment promotion community. We also heard about the IPAs in the context of investment climate and respective policies, which is not about promotion in a vacuum. You're operating in an investment climate, and investors are looking at that, not just at the investment promotion agency. The importance of restoring investor confidence in this particular moments, more than ever, investors are very, they have uncertainty. And if you come to the plate and provide better confidence, that would be what they would be looking at or looking for. And this is the time for IPAs to show their worth, as I repeat the words from Christine. From Alex and Ahmed, we heard a wealth of information relevant to the 3 pillars of effective investment promotion, and I already summarized them early under the concepts of strategy, institutions, and services. We also had a very interesting discussion, again, too much to fit into this few minutes, but then there's a few areas of research that perhaps some of you were suggesting, such as the link with some performance, so that we can have a better information of what works and what doesn't work in investment promotion. Especially now, we need to revise a few pieces of information. Some of you ask about how do you do outreach in the context of no travel? And so this is some of the questions that we will need to all think about. For now, let me reflect on a few points, and that would be perhaps repeating some of the points. Too many IPAs are catering to the same investors, so watch out. This points to the need of further differentiation. So marketing 101, you guys who study business, remember that. You need to differentiate yourself. You need to find a compelling value proposition. So for that, you need to look for that target, very specific niche that you have something to offer of value. And that value proposition then is something that you would be talking to investors that would be a lot more open to entertain, right? That needs to be done based on research. It cannot be coming from the top down without any further analysis and research. We saw how IPAs continue being too focused at attraction, and with the current context, the call for, which dramatically changed the rules of the game, the call for IPAs to provide more services to existing investors. And especially now that you cannot do events and travel, you should reshift or reallocate the resources, including human resources and funding, to those investor services that are needed now. We also learned about IPA's challenges before COVID, but these have been exacerbated by the pandemic, the financial support. So they're asking from governments increased budget support, in this context, perhaps just to keep the same level, coordination, better institutional coordination, and then some key reforms. And as I mentioned, in the current context, I guess the agency should be lobbying for just keep the same level of budget, repurposed for other things, because you are that connector with investors, which will help with the recovery of the economy. And second, keep the country open for FDI, because if you shut it down, the recovery will not come as fast, especially in the developing countries. Many uncertainties remain, but in the current context, and more than ever, we have said it, governments need to have agile and proactive IPAs who would be listening to investors, provide relevant services, retain as many investors, save as many jobs, and help with a faster recovery. IPAs can and must step up to fulfill these expectations, and to do so, we have provided several steps. One, review, revise, and confirm strategies, sectors, approaches, systems, services. So do it quick, don't take too many months, while adapting to the new environment. Second, advocate for the needed reforms. And third, proactively promote like never before. Building on the 3 pillars, and we just mentioned it many, many times, but that would allow you to have a sharper strategic focus. Sometimes having a strategy, you're not sharp enough. So be sharp on the strategy, have more coherent institutional framework. It's not just about the IPA, you need to talk and work with others. And by the way, do reinforce IT capabilities. We have found too many agencies that were not ready for this. And last but not least, a stronger suite of relevant and quality services to investors, as we're preaching in some of our literature. And I believe this should help in getting investment going to your countries, as Christine was encouraging. Please do take a look at the report. Do take a look at the interactive platform, as Bostian indicated. Please, Alex, if you could show, there you go. All right, so that is there. The links will be active. Once you receive the presentation, you just click on it and you will have the presentation, the reports, the recording as well, and then the interactive platform there for you all to explore. And I now want to thank the speakers for their interventions, and thank you all for having been such a wonderful audience. Great participation, you know, too many comments, suggestions, questions. So we really, really thank you all for having participated. And with that, I unfortunately declare this webinar closed until the next one. Thank you again.
Thanks a lot.